what are some of the initial tips that you could provide around persuasion and around how that is something that can make you really successful?
Learning to persuade people is almost everything in communication. We're always negotiating, we're always trying to persuade people, whether we realize it or not. There's a difference though between trying to persuade somebody and trying to manipulate them.
If I have a leader that's selfish and isn't interested in pouring into me or my peers, that to me is an immediate turnoff.
You can read books and all that, and Dale Carnegie wrote some great books, and all that'll help you, but it's still not the same as having a live person, coach, teaching you. AI is still not going to cut it, not for a while.
Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Wealth podcast. Today I have Donald Weber, and I'm your host, Andres Sanchez. As always, Donald is a corporate coach, somebody who's very well versed in persuasion, communication, public speaking. This is a really exciting conversation because I know we have tons of younger entrepreneur listeners. Being able to communicate verbally and non-verbally is extremely important in your career. Understanding how to persuade people, win deals, understand conversations is one of the most important skills you can learn. And I'm happy that we have an expert here with us today. So Donald, thank you so much for being here with us.
Sure, my pleasure, Andres. Fantastic.
I always like to give the floor to the guests right off the bat and just let everybody know who Donald is, who we're speaking with today, and from there we'll dive into your journey and story.
Right. I'll make it just real quick. I have a background in business, and I worked for an insurance brokerage. Then I worked for many years for the U.S. government overseas in a very sensitive type job. I had many years experience of that. Then I got involved as a diamond broker. Actually, that was kind of in parallel when I was working with the government. And then after that, I became a glorified teacher. So I'd like to say a corporate trainer and coach. And I've been lucky enough to work with multiple senior executives of including Fortune 100 companies, members of royalty, prime minister's offices in Europe, members of parliament, both national and at the EU level, high court judges, and the list could go on and on. And now it sounds like I'm bragging about myself. So I've learned a lot about communication, human interaction.
How did you kind of go down that path? I would assume that your sensitive government job had something to do with this field, and that was kind of how you worked into it. But how did you get into communication and persuasion? And obviously, yes, you were bragging about yourself, but that's what we're here for. I mean, that's a really great resume right there. I'd love to learn more about how you got down that road.
Right. I think the communications thing was, as a kid, I was like bullied, and I was like a nerd is not the right word, but I was like a nerd. It's just like not cool. And I wanted to be cool because I like girls. So I was saying, well, if I'm going to like hook up with girls, I need to like be cool, right? So I put a lot of effort into getting better at communicating and being cool. And the reason I ended up working at the government was because I was already good at communications. I was very good at manipulating. I just got better at it. And I got training how to be more effective at that kind of thing. But yeah, it was something. I think it was more based on meeting the opposite sex and stuff like that. To be straight up, that was my real motivation. Straight.
Hey, everything starts somewhere. So in that time, like obviously you decided to go and take this government job, which we don't need to talk in too much detail because, like you said, it is semi-private unless it is something that you're interested in talking about. How'd you end up overseas? Because I know we were talking off camera, like you were American, but now you're overseas. Did that job kind of take you over there, and then you just wanted to stay? I'd love to learn about that part of your journey.
Thanks. That's a great question. Basically, I was recruited when we had the Al Qaeda thing through. It's a really weird story. This I can tell you. I was invited to have lunch with the French consulate in southern Spain, Malaga, and we had lunch. And then through the course of a lunch, he said, "Hey, I've got a friend that works at the U.S. Department of Treasury at the embassy in Paris, and he'd really like to talk to you." I didn't know exactly what was going down. I knew something was going down, but it sounded exciting as a young guy, whatever. So they put me through a few tests and stuff like that, the things I had to accomplish for them that kind of gave me an inclination of what I was getting into. And I passed with flying colors. It was actually quite easy. I'm going to say more than skill. I was just like lucky, but anyway,
Hmm.
we'll see. And then, yeah, then I got involved, and that all that work was mostly overseas. I was working in Africa a lot, Latin America, and other parts of the world. I stay overseas most of the time because I've just gotten comfortable being outside the U.S. And most of the time, my base was in Europe during those years, in a NATO country. So that's one of the main reasons I'm just more comfortable because I've been most of my life living here, more so than the States at this point.
And I'm sure there's somebody listening right now that is interested in potentially trying to go and get a cool government job like the one you're speaking about right now, that they're interested in something along those lines. Like, what advice could you give to that individual?
First, it's not a cool government job because you can't tell anybody about it. That's the reality. Okay. And it's like you're living in a world, there's a world out there that people don't realize exists. Okay. So, like, I mean, I was running around every day with Interpol agents and Europol agents and all the three-letter agencies you can think about, not just in work, in high stress work. I mean, I saw everything a soldier on the front line would see, people getting killed, lots of blood, saw lots of that kind of stuff. It was right down dangerous. In fact, I almost got killed a couple of times and spent extensive periods of times in hospitals overseas getting patched up. So it's not a joke, huh? It's if you're doing what I was doing, a lot of people get killed straight up. You have to have the appetite for it. So it's not like a cool job and you're going to get laid because,
Hmm.
hey, yeah, I work for such and such. You can't tell anybody on top of it. So, in fact, and you're always living under a cover. You're always living under a lie, and you're always worried about not worried, but you're always aware that you can get uncovered. So a lot of times I might have an opportunity to take home some pretty young lady, and I would pass on doing it because there might be a professional risk doing so. Keep in mind, you could get drugged. Stuff happens, man, and get yourself kidnapped or into weird situations. So uh, there's limitations. It's not cool. It's actually not cool. It's exciting. If you want to become an adrenaline junkie, it's the place to go. Yeah, for sure.
Got it. So once you kind of get past that world and you start to go into the more professional world, like we talked about, you're a corporate coach. You speak a lot on public speaking, persuasion, like communication, and you've had the chance to work with all of these amazing people. I'd love to start with the persuasion topic. I think that's a really interesting one. What are some of the initial tips that you could provide around persuasion and around how that is something that can make you really successful?
Learning to persuade learning to persuade people is almost everything in communication. We're always negotiating. We're always trying to persuade people, whether we realize it or not. There's a difference though between trying to persuade somebody and trying to manipulate them, right? Of course, you can try to use the carrot and the stick. Say, if you don't do this, I'm going to hit you over the head with the stick. But if you do this, you're going to get this carrot or get this money. Okay, that's real basic kind of. It's almost like coercion. But if we're talking about persuading people, you have to put yourself in their mind. What is it that they're looking for? What is it that they want to get out of it? Sometimes I can give you a weird story that happened to me yesterday that it's been years since I've had a thing like that. You have some people that you're not going to be able to persuade because they're just not coming from a space or they're maybe psychologically not well. They have emotional issues. That's another thing. But generally, you're dealing with somebody who's mentally healthy and all that kind of stuff. You just think about what is it that this person wants? What is it that makes this person tick? What's important for this person? Is it that they want to be felt? Do they want to feel important? If you know that, if you can identify that through the conversation, then make them feel important. If you do that, they're going to like you. And it's going to be a lot easier to persuade them to your point of view or to persuade them in the direction. Keep in mind, persuasion is not something you do in 2 seconds. Sometimes it takes time. It might take weeks. When you're developing a foreign asset overseas, you know what that is? Foreign asset?
Yep.
You're trying to get somebody to spy on their government. It takes years, typically. Years.
That's crazy.
Interesting, right? So when you're trying to persuade somebody, it's a step by step process. So I need to understand first the person's psychology, what it is that's important for that person, right? So okay, let's just say the most common one, they want to feel important. Maybe they want to feel safe. That's their thing, or they want to feel secure. Maybe that's their thing. So make them feel secure. Use language that makes them feel secure. Another tip that you can use is by using the other person's language. In other words, Andres, if I repeat back the same language that you're using, the same verbiage, maybe I'll use some of the same adjectives. So, you say, boy, that was a really awesome pizza that we ate. I might say the same words. Say, yeah, pizza was awesome, wasn't it? Rather than say, yeah, that pizza was really delicious. So you may want to use the exact same words. You may change the order, but some of that, not overdoing it, because then people say something weird's going on here, and this guy, it's like a borderline personality disorder or something. No, that's not what we're talking about. But by mimicking some of the verbiage and the words that people are using, this helps build a connection with some people. A lot of this stuff doesn't work with everyone. There's different tools, and you have to know when to apply which tools to which person, which context, what situation, what you're dealing with, and listening to what they're not saying. People can say things, and if you listen closely, those words can be very revealing. For example, I was speaking with a CEO of a pretty big company, and there was something going on it was a workshop, and he was having I can say this, I'm not saying names. There was this young chick there from university, about 20 years old, right? And this guy's old. He's like 50 something. He's married, and I think he's got kids and all that. But anyway, I know he's married anyway. Anyway, there was obviously something. They were bonding, the two of them, right? And I said something that he didn't like. So he said to me, he replied to me, and it was kind of nasty. But he goes, I'm not like you. To me, he wasn't saying to insult me. Huh? It was just something that slipped out of his mouth. But immediately, I recognized something. So, okay, with this person, I need to be very aware of that when I'm dealing with him. I need to treat him in a different way than I'm treating the rest of the group. The rest of the group, there was great. It was great synergy and great cohesion. We all saw things in the same way. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. One day we had to go to lunch, and the CEO and this young chick, right? They're sitting there talking at lunch, and for like not 40 minutes, but about a good 30 minutes, they were ignoring the entire workshop, all the class. We all got up and said, "We're leaving now. We're going, we're going to lunch. If you guys want to join us." It was hilarious. It was like completely, they were off in their little world. In fantasy land, I don't know, romantic conversation. I'm not really sure because I wasn't listening to what they were talking about. But it was pretty hilarious. Because when we all got up to leave, we were kind of like, because normally we would always be moving about as groups, right? But anyway, side story. I went on a tangent there.
No, all good. And when you're connecting with a lot of these big leaders, like people that are extremely high up, what do you typically think that they're looking for? Like, are they somebody who are looking to feel important? Like, because I know that when talking to an individual employee and then talking to the CEO, there's always going to be a difference in communication style. And from your perspective, like because I know a lot of the people listening to this podcast are younger and are trying to forge relationships, make connections. So they're looking to go and connect with that CEO or going to look and connect with that executive. What are some of the communication like skills, or in what way should they be thinking about communicating with these higher up individuals?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't be intimidated because they're people just like you and me. And as I remind people who lack self-confidence or have confidence issues, they put on their shoe, one shoe at a time, and tie it up just like you. They go to the bathroom and they poop just like you, me, and everyone. And keep that in mind. They're just human beings. Typically, probably the most common characteristic I find these people is ego. That's a strong ego drive. When I get with the politicians, I would say super. They try to hide it, but that seems to be a major, a common characteristic. They usually are very good communicators. They can be very charismatic. They have a lot of gravitas. They're very likable. Why? Because they listen. They ask questions about you. They make you feel important. They make you feel valued in that moment, like you're the most important person to them in the world, and you're their best friend. It's a gift, but it's a gift you can learn how to do. So if you can single somebody out, make them feel important and valued, and you're generally interested and curious about them and the best for them, right? And you're thinking on your side as a junior, oh, wow, I've just made the best friend in the world. No, you haven't. That's just the person has great communication skills in order to engage people. But it's important. If I want to motivate you, inspire you as a junior employee or whatever to do, to follow our new strategy or our new mission or whatever we're doing. That's a very common characteristic that you'll find with leaders, whether they're I'm saying diplomats too. Diplomats are a little different, but I'm saying politicians or CEOs, COOs, or senior directors of big companies. Most of the time, most of the time. Huh?
And I like that point that you just made there, where like there's two sides to this. Once you learn how to communicate effectively, you can also identify when somebody else is kind of using those tactics on you, because I know that happens to some people where it's like I mean, this is maybe not the best analogy, but it's like the guy that goes to the strip club for the first time and thinks that the stripper wants to date him, and his friends like, no, they're just doing their job. Like, you'll be back tomorrow. But that's like important for younger people to understand, because you might have a conversation with a high up executive and they're doing their job of being charismatic, being excited. You might leave that conversation, if you don't know much about communication, and be like, wow, like I got the job, or like, wow, like I'm gonna I'm gonna climb up the ladder really quickly. Like, this is a done deal. But that person probably had that same conversation with five other of your peers. It's just the way that they communicate, the way that they move. And I think it's important for younger people to understand that once you understand how to communicate, you can also see through some other people when they're trying to use some of those tactics or communications towards you.
Absolutely. And Andres, you're a great communicator, man. Serious.
Thank
I'm
you.
not.
Thank
I'm
you.
not. I'm not. And that was a great analogy. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to borrow that at one of my workshops. I'll need it for when it's only guys,
Yeah.
because we got all this weird like stuff in Europe where female rights. Anyway, I get myself in a whole barrel of trouble. But if I got guys, I could definitely use that as an analogy. Yeah, it's exactly true. It's like, oh, aren't I special? No, I mean, if you're doing a great job and you show promise and you're really smart and all that, and you realize that you're getting more attention than other people from the senior leader, that's a good sign.
Hmm.
You know, let the senior leader see you shine, for sure. If you have an opportunity to give a presentation to the board of directors or the steering committee or that kind of thing, I've worked with a lot of people in this sort of thing, and I've helped them polish a really good presentation. And as a result of that good presentation, of their hard work in that presentation, they got the attention of the senior management, and guess what? They got promotions. But the one fallacy that most people don't like to accept is it's hard work, man. It doesn't just
Yeah.
come like boom. People want they want instant gratification, like you get, I don't know, you post something on Instagram and you get 50 likes. It doesn't work that way in the real world. It's hard work. You fail your way to success. Anybody you've seen that's gotten good at anything, they've been through so much, I guess I can say, so much shit
Hmm.
before they succeeded. Then they succeed. And you have the one off of somebody who gets lucky. But you look at any sports star, how much training, how many years of training? Sure, they had talent, but if they didn't practice and they didn't train really hard, they wouldn't be anything. How much talent is there in the world of people that never developed that talent and they never became nothing and you never heard of them? It's a fact. So it's like anything. It's a muscle. You have to keep training it, get stronger, and you get better at it. And if you stop training it, it gets weaker and you start losing it too.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and it's funny, like we mentioned off camera, I'm in sales. Sales is all about communication, talking, being able to understand the person on the other side of the camera or the other side of the table. And that was the motivation for me to start this podcast 2 years ago. I was at my job and I was like, I need something outside of work to get excited about. But at the same time, I also understand that you've got to flex your muscles. You've got to practice what's important for you to be successful in your job. So I landed on this podcast. I'm going to come on here, talk to executives, talk to CEOs, talk to business owners, understand them, learn from them, and actively be working on my communication skills outside of work constantly. And I would be lying if a lot of the things I've learned in these conversations or and a lot of the skills that I picked up in these conversations haven't bled over to my day job where I've been more successful because of what I've built outside of work. But it was because I knew that communication was something that is important and is going to be needed the whole time through my career. Why not try and double dip and do something that allows me to get better at it every single time I click record, knowing
Mm-hmm.
that I can go and take it back and close deals all week long with
Mm-hmm.
things I've learned, with skills I've learned. So I think it is really important for people to understand that point you just made about like the muscle will get weaker if you do not continue to work at it. You will never be an expert. You will never be the top of the field. There's always things to learn. There's always areas to improve on, and I think that's really important. So I like that you made that point.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. The more, I
Uh,
mean, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Sorry. So my next thing was like I want to talk about your business specifically.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a coaching, somewhat consulting style business. Yep. Yeah,
Keep talking.
I'd love to allow you to kind of go through and give somewhat of a soft pitch on that business, on who you're looking for, who your ideal customers are, and really who you are marketing towards in this business so that you're able to potentially reach those people through this podcast and maybe be able to get to work with some of the CEOs that we've had on and different things. So I'd love for you to give us kind of that soft pitch on what the business is.
Okay, sure. You want the soft pitch, not the hard pitch, right?
Yeah.
Soft pitch. All right. So, look, when I work with usually with senior people like politicians, they're good public speakers or CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Generally, they're very good public speakers. They know what they're doing. But why they hire me? Generally, is because they have a special event coming up and they need to practice and they want to polish it. And it'll be some special thing they have to deliver at the embassy, or they have to speak at, I don't know, some special GSE event and BlackRock people are going to be there, or this kind. They're talking actually real scenarios. So they'll hire somebody like myself to come in to work with them to just polish their skills because they realize that you can always get better. So they're already good, but they want to be even better for that one event. So that's one type of person that I would work with. Another type, which is a very common one, are usually like more junior managers or people who are ambitious that want to go somewhere in their company and they realize, oh, wow, if I want to be an effective leader or I want to go somewhere in this company, I need to be good at giving good sales presentations or I need to be better at communicating with my team because I keep hearing that my team members are not understanding what I'm saying, or maybe their boss has come to them and told them, this has happened too, go get some communications training. That's another one. The challenge here is again, you what just because you know the techniques, you need to learn to apply the techniques regularly. It needs to become what they call unconsciously competent, meaning it's integrating you automatically. It's like you get on a bike and you don't think about riding the bike, or you drive home in your car and you're not thinking about changing the gears, or well, even if you're driving an automatic, you're not thinking about driving because you just know how to do it, right? Um, if you have to think about doing it, it's not going to go as smoothly. So knowing the techniques is one thing. Another thing is practicing them. So when I work with people, sure, I give you theory, PowerPoints, and all that stuff. But where the learning comes in is where they have to practice it, and that's maybe the hard part because that's where they're doing the reps. But that's
Mm.
actually where they're getting better. And if we're working in a group environment, well, then it's great because then they get feedback from their peers, not just from me. And sometimes in a group environment, it's even better because you get more perspectives from different people, and more perspective from more people can give you valuable insight. It's kind of like a 360 kind of thing. I think that's kind of a soft pitch. So basically, I teach communications, which would be public speaking, presentation skills. There's a lot of different kind of presentations, from TED Talks, sales presentations, or board of directors and that kind of stuff. Leadership training, how to communicate with people, how to get the most out of people, how to motivate people, how to make people feel good, how to deliver feedback. Or what do you do when you get into a disagreement and a difficult conversation with somebody? How can you best handle that? And to make it more challenging, you need to change a person's point of view to get the project done, for example. So how do you handle that? It's not easy, especially if the person's
No.
dug in and you work in the same organization and you're going to have to see them again tomorrow and the day after. So there's techniques that you can learn that will facilitate that, make it a lot easier, and they're invaluable. They're invaluable, and you can read books and all that. And Dale Carnegie wrote some great books, and all that'll help you. But it's still not the same as having a live person coach teaching you. AI is still not going to cut it, not for a while anyway.
Yeah, I think we're still far away from that. People crave the human connection, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon. Um, One of the ones that stuck out to me there is the leadership side. I think that's just a really important skill for people to learn, and I think it's something that younger people should be focused on developing early on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when you're working with some of these amazing leaders, what are some of the traits that stand out to you on like wow, like this person is going to be a really good leader? And also, when working with leaders, what are some of the key focus areas that you work with them on? Because I'm somebody who's passionate about leadership. I want to own a company one day. I have employees for this company, and I eventually, if still in corporate America, would love to go down the leadership route. So I'd love to pick your brain a little bit on some of these leadership tips.
Okay, communication there is focusing on one thing. So if I'm working on a project or working with you, let's say, Andres, about something, not getting 20 million distractions going on around me, so I can just focus on you, focus on whatever it is that we're working on to get it done, blocking an hour, 45 minutes, or whatever amount of time, so we can just focus on this one project or us as a team to get done what we need to do. The other thing, when I'm explaining something to somebody, don't assume that they understand all the jargon. That's a more in the U.S. than in Europe, but people love to use like acronyms and
Mm-hmm.
fancy language and stuff like that to show how smart they are.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with being a good communicator. The smart people, the best professors at Harvard University, for example, or any of the top universities, is they can grab a very complicated subject and make it simple to understand. And that's a sign of a good communicator, grabbing something the complex and making it easy so that your grandmother can understand what you're talking about. That's one thing that a good leader can do. Aside from making you feel special and a valuable part of the team and all that kind of thing, and that it's not coming across like it's all about, if I'm the leader, it's all about me. No, it's about my team, because my team is going to make the leader look good. He's going to make, if your team performs well, the leader automatically looks well. If the team does not perform well, the leader doesn't look well. Now, what the leader can do, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, he'll blame the team for it," but at the end of the day, it all points back to whoever has the mantle. Running around blaming everybody else for everything going wrong is just a cop out. That's just not manning up. And if you're a lady, I guess it would be you're not lading up to what it is that means. You're not taking responsibility. So things
Yeah.
don't work out always, but um, it's a matter of just knowing, okay, the box starts with me as a leader. Even if I explained everything right, I did everything right, da 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 da, but the project didn't get it was not accomplished. It's still my responsibility, because that's why I'm the boss. So that's why I'm the leader. So I need to figure out how I can get this accomplished. Now, maybe the problem is I hired the wrong people. I put the wrong people on the team. That could be. But the bottom line is it's still my fault because the project didn't get done, and I'm the one that's responsible for it. So the buck stops with me. And that's just really the bottom line. And you see with politicians all the time blaming everybody else but themselves. The buck stops with them. I'm sorry. There's no excuse. You can, if not, don't take the job.
Yeah. And I think for me, as like an individual contributor that's like under leaders, the biggest turnoff is somebody who doesn't want to take responsibility. And if I have a leader that's selfish and isn't interested in pouring into me or my peers, that to me is an immediate turnoff, because I look at it as like they're in it for all the wrong reasons. Like, you shouldn't take a leadership role if you're not passionate about uplifting and helping the people below you.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is what a leader is. And of course, in corporate America, you're, especially working at one of the biggest companies in the world, you're going to come across a lot of bad apples.
Mm-hmm.
But the few times that I have come across fantastic leaders, they have had all the traits that you mentioned. They're taking the responsibility. They're the ones owning all the problems. They're focused on making sure I feel special. I feel like I'm doing the right things. And that bleeds over to me performing better. Like, it's, if you have a good leader, you're going to perform better than if you have a bad leader. It's just that it's pretty simple. So it's really important.
I mean, think about this. If you're in the army and you have a dickhead sergeant say, "I want you to take your rifle and get out of this trench and go run towards that guy that's shooting at you," and you don't like that sergeant and you don't trust him,
I'm not going.
how likely are we going to get out of the trench and go running? Now
No,
we have a sergeant that we adore, we love, we trust. How likely are we going to get out of the trench and go?
we're going.
Even though we're probably browning our pants in the process, but we're going to try to. So it's the same thing for a leader in an organization. I mean, if you like that guy or that girl, that leader, you're going to work that much harder. If you don't like them because they just don't treat people well or whatever, then you're not going to work as hard. That's just human nature. You want to make, if I have a leader or somebody I work with, I want to make them look good.
Yep.
However, if I have somebody who's above me who treats me like dog poop, my loyalty to them is going to be minimized. And you do see it a lot in big organizations. People not knowing what good leadership skills are, not knowing how to treat people, being it for the wrong reasons. A lot of things, big ego. It's all about me. No, man, nobody makes it to the top by themselves. It's all done on the sweat of other people. And if you don't realize that, then, but yeah, I've seen people where they'll have like somebody, one of their colleagues work on a PowerPoint, like a big one, right? And then when they deliver it to them, takes their name off, puts their name on it, and goes and delivers it to the board of directors, and not give the person any credit for the work. I mean,
Yeah, that's not
to me,
cool.
it's disgusting. But anyway, that particular case was in Spain. I saw that. It was just like unbelievable. Because I worked with the person to put together the PowerPoint. Not that my name needed to be. My name, I was a consultant, didn't need to be on it. But her name, and I believe she was paying for it out of her own pocket, if I remember correctly. I mean,
That's terrible.
yeah, it is not very good. But anyway, there's all kinds of people in the world, and that's why the world is in the mess it's in. We're in the mess
Yeah.
we deserve to be. And they say we get the leaders we deserve. It's a reflection
Yeah.
of the consciousness of the people. Our leaders are the reflection of the consciousness of our people. I read somewhere once.
That's an interesting. I haven't heard that, and I think that's an interesting point. We get the leaders that we deserve. Um, one of the things that I wanted to talk on was also the presentation aspect. You
Mhm.
mentioned that a few times. Presentations are extremely important, whether you're going into corporate America, whether you're trying to launch a startup and raise capital. Like this is just going to be an integral part of of almost everybody's life is going to be making a PowerPoint and presenting it.
Mhm.
What are some of the, like, when people work with you around PowerPoints and building presentations, what does that look like, and what are some of the things you all work on?
One of the big things, a very common thing that I see is like way too much information on the slides. And a lot of people actually, they realize that and they say, no, but that's what my boss wants. That's what they want. Da, 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 da. You should know the information as the presenter. And you don't need to put every single number and figure on the slide. Make it simple to understand what it is. And you might have one or two data slides, but you can still break it down, dumb it down. And if you need to hand out something that's like an Excel with hundreds of lines of data and stuff, then what you do is that data, you do a printout and you hand those out to the people. But the
Yeah.
slides that are on the display, simple. 390 as maximum. Try to keep the background dark. And if it has company corporate colors, fine, but the background is dark as possible. The letters light. That contrast helps. Try to limit how many words are on the presentations. Keep in mind too, the presentation is not about you. In other words, what I'm saying, the presentation, let me say it again. The PowerPoint isn't the presentation. It's about you. So when you're presenting, you should be there thinking about how I'm going here to help people, enlighten people, whether it's a board of directors, it's a client, it's a customer, whatever. How I'm here to help you, not what I'm here to get out of it for me. That's the biggest mistake in most people. How do I look to everybody else? How cool am I? Does everybody think I'm cool? Does she think I'm sexy? Am I going to get that raise? Am I going to get that promotion? No, think about I'm here to help people. If you do that, it reduces a lot of the stress and anxiety that you're going to be experiencing when giving a presentation. One. Number two, when you're delivering a presentation, you're there not just to present the information, but you should know the information inside and out. You should be prepared. That means you need to practice, and that's time consuming. The worst thing you don't want to do is go to a steering committee, a board of directors, they ask you a question, you can't answer it. And this is another one to keep in mind. If you ever go in front of a bunch of senior executives, it's very common because that's happened to my clients a bunch of times. We designed this 20-minute presentation, beautiful presentation. They walk in the room and they say, great, we don't want to see the slides. Tell us in 5 minutes what we need to know. You're like, I'm not prepared. So the way to get
Yeah.
around that, so the way you get around that is you prepare two versions. You have the long version, and then you have the executive brief. And what you can do is once you have that executive brief, which is just bare bones of what needs to be said, you might even use that to start and say, this is what I'm going to talk about, and this is what you're going to get out of this presentation. So they know you're setting the expectations, you're framing it, so they know what to expect, what benefit they're going to get, and what they're going to learn from your presentation. And now, because as the listener, as part of the audience, there's something in this for me, I should listen rather than it's another boring presentation from our distribution manager in such and such zone who's going to tell us about how many Twinkies we sold this past quarter, whatever, right?
Yeah, that's the worst. Like I I I can't watch when people are monotone reading off the slides. It's just like nothing is going to get accomplished with that. Um, but this
Voice
conversation, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, voice coaching is another very good thing to learn when you say about monotone. Like, the people talk to you like this, it's just like one note on a piano. I mean, how long are you going to listen to me? And the problem is, if you think you know what I sound like, and I'm going to sound like again later, you will also think you know what I'm going to say next, and that's a big problem. So, using some fluctuations in the voice, if you study an Obama or any well known, any good public speaker, you'll see that they vary their voice, they speed up, they slow down. They keep changing things to maintain the presentation, the conversation interesting, and that's important to make for a good presentation. Obviously, it's not the same as a political presentation as doing a work one, but still you can implement some of those techniques by changing your voice around, speeding up, slowing down. Speeding up when you want to add excitement, slowing down when you want everybody to relax. If you slow down too much, you may people into it. Slow down too much, you may put everyone into a coma. So anyway, all depends.
Yeah. um, I mean, this conversation has been extremely interesting from my side because a lot of the stuff, like I say this all the time, like a lot of the stuff that we just talked about, I will selfishly go take and use in my life and in my world. But I also think that there's a ton of value for the people listening and watching wherever they're tuned in, um, and getting the chance to learn and understand a lot of these skills. Um, I know, like I mentioned before, we started rolling the question I love to ask every guest at the end of every episode. And I think it's actually going to be really interesting because you've lived a very interesting life over your time. So, with everything that you know now, what would you go back and tell the 18-year-old you?
I probably would have studied. I had a real thing about studying like human behavior and psychology rather than business and economics, though it served me well. I probably would have put more emphasis on studying psychology. I wouldn't have married my first wife. That's serious. Um, and as far as the government job, I don't know if I would have gotten involved now,
Mm,
because I don't know really how much good I did for society. I thought I did. I thought I was. But looking back and all the stuff with the Iraq War and Afghanistan and all that stuff, and there was a lot of things there that maybe wasn't actually helping as much as I thought.
And just curious, like, is it hard, like, looking back at that and feeling the way you feel now, or have you kind of gotten past it?
No, it's not hard. I mean, just I look at it kind of like, okay, well, it was a learning experience, and everything you learn from problems, whatever, is something to learn from. So I don't like regret it, but I probably, if I had was do a rewind, I
Mm,
probably would have done those things differently. Just simply because I don't see the value that much value. Keep in mind that was like 10 years of my life basically living a lie. That's what I did for a living, right? And that's not really very healthy. It's not very productive. It's not very people got hurt. They might have been the enemy or the other side, but people get hurt, and it's
yeah.
not really. There are people that worked in the same kind of business would disagree with me, but I think from an enlightened standpoint, it was not the best choice, at least not for me, because I'm not into hurting people. And actually, I got out of it because it got a little bit too. Um, it was going in a really nefarious direction, and
Mm,
it was during the Obama administration I got out of there because there's certain things I'm just not into.
got it. Um, I want to make sure anybody that listened or was interested in this can connect with you. We've got a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs that listen to this, and obviously everything that you're offering is very applicable to what they do. So if we did pique their interest and if they were interested in connecting with you, what's the best way for them to go and do that?
Probably just jump on the website, Dr. Weber Coaching, Dr. Weber Coaching. And if you put that in, you'll see I write a column for Entrepreneur Magazine. Should be all over the place. I've written for Business Insider. So I should be easy to find. But probably the website's the best. And you go to contact and send me an email, and make sure you put where you saw me, because I do get like spam to death, like most of us. So that's an unfortunate thing. If you send the email to maybe Don at drwebercoaching.com, that'll go directly to me and less likely end up in the spam box. I hope the spamsters aren't listening. And now tomorrow I'll get 20,000 emails in that box. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
Don at drwebercoaching.com.
Awesome. And is there a social media that you're most active on that they should follow you on if they want to just kind of follow you on your journey?
Sure. Depends which way you want to go. LinkedIn at Don Weber, DonWeber. And then if you're into politics and some crazy stuff, you probably go to YouTube. And that's more political. I've gone more into political stuff because there's just too much news to ignore. It's just crazy, especially in Europe, man. It's like it's a field day. And that's YouTube is DR Weber Coaching. Not
Okay.
.com. It's at DR
Perfect.
Weber. But that's very political. LinkedIn, I don't put political stuff there. I just put like helpful tips and stuff like that. So.
Awesome. And for anybody listening, we will have all of Donald's stuff in the description below, whether you're watching or listening. So go ahead, click it, connect with him. If this was something that was interesting for you, which it should be, because you shouldn't be ignoring all of these things we talked about if you actually want to be successful in business. But Donald, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. This was an absolutely amazing conversation, and one that I am going to definitely go and listen back to and pull out nuggets for myself. And I'm sure a lot of people will as well. So I do appreciate you making the time.
My pleasure, Andres. I really appreciate it too. Real pleasure.
Awesome. And thank you everybody for tuning in and listening. That is it for today's podcast, and we will see you on the next one.